much as I strolled without a care, 'cause I'm going down the road to a brand new place, and I'll get there with a smile on my face. Yeah, so lift me up, I'm moving on, singing and dancing while I play my song.
We did it. Welcome your backup plan tribe to another version of our podcast today called How to Heal from Secondary Grief. Imagine that. Did anybody ever think there was such a thing as secondary grief? I didn't. I thought grief was grief, and it's crippling no matter how you look at it or what you call it. But that's our scope for today's show, and I'm so very excited to have Dr. Clare Biedenharn on again on our show. I can't believe it. I am blessed. And so you guys better watch out, because we are in for lots of tips from Clare. So welcome. If you are new here, welcome to our show. My name is Tina Ginn, Talking Taboo with Tina. Yes, we talk taboo on our show all the time, every time, all the day, every day. Yes, we can't talk taboo enough, because we really need to get it out there to people. We really need to get it amongst our family and friends. We need to talk about these things that we don't want to talk about. I am an emergency preparedness coach, a best-selling author of In the Blink of an Eye. Remember, Jeannie? That's how fast something happens, just like that. In the blink of an eye, things happen that quickly. So you better be prepared. I am a financial expert and app developer of your Backup Plan app. And if you are new here, welcome to our show. Welcome, and please subscribe. I always get my hand out and click on that bell down below. I can never get this right in the screen. Click on that subscribe button so that you get notified of any upcoming videos and interviews that might intrigue you, because we all have such interesting stories. If you are new here, we focus on real, raw conversations with our listeners about their journey as a guest from a life-changing event in their life and how that affected them. Your Backup Plan app, puts your stuff, all of your stuff in your life, all into one place in case of any unpredictable circumstance, while taking that painful aftermath out of that tragedy. It could be, a wildfire or a hurricane or a tornado or a flood or a storm or cancer word or a heart attack or a disability or a car accident. I mean, I could go on and on. We could spend 2 hours listing things that affect us in our life. So be prepared for the unexpected, because do not take the stance of it won't happen to me, because life is very complicated and you're not Superman. Mike Tyson, the famous fighter, says, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the mouth. And that's very true. We think we have a plan. We think we might make a plan one day. We think we might do it, but we probably haven't. Or we don't know what it is that we need to put together. It's easy to sign up for the app and put all your stuff in it. It's like an assistant. It's easy. You can do it 1, 2, 3. You can do a little bit each month until the end of the year, and you're all completed. It makes it really simple, and it puts it all in a place so that if you ever needed it, you have it too, as well as your loved one. So we have a blueprint program coming very soon. It's a course, and you can start by, what do I need to put together? How do I put it together? What documents do I have? What information that's digital do I have? How do I understand my insurance policies? How do I get my attorneys to talk to my accountant? How do I watch more interviews? There's a library of videos and interviews on our platform. We have workshops for people that are part of the group. where we can do a treasure chest night, where we talk about what can we do to put in our treasure chest so that we can leave that wonderful legacy for those that we leave behind. So if you haven't, please like, share, and subscribe. And I'd like to thank all of my American and Canadian listeners. Thank you so very much, as well as our German listeners, because you're number 3 on the top for the last 2 years. I can't believe it. Meine deutsche Freunde sind unserem Podcast willkommen. Wenn Sie Kommentare haben, können Sie gern Fragen stellen. Also danke fürs Hören und danke für deine Freundschaft. So thank you very, very much. Now, the next new one for this month is Italy. They're 4th, and they've just beat Ireland. So go Italy, go Ireland. You guys can do it. So let's get this party started. If you have found us, you are here for a reason, because there's definitely something in this that you need to hear. And I'd like to welcome Dr. Clare Biedenharn in the house. Here we are.
Hello. Hello.
Welcome, welcome. Thank you for coming on.
Good to see you, Tina.
Yes, it's nice to see you too. So Clare is an author twice. She is a chaplain, a pastor, a care training facilitator, and I also have her show from her first book in the description box down below. The link is there if you want to know more about Dr. Clare. She has her first book, which is behind her there on the shelf, is Heart to Heart. And it's all about how good you are at listening. It's like Price is Right.
I know.
How much is that book? And you have to. And your next book is Reflect, Reconnect, and Restore, Healing from Secondary Grief. There we go. Awesome. And all your links are down below for everybody listening. So, Clare, what do you think? And you come from Kentucky in United States, for anybody that is around there or knows of beautiful Kentucky. What made you start on this next book, Clare?
Well, one thing before we start on that, I would like to say thank you to your listeners in Italy, Germany, England, because I've sold books there now. And I was surprised because I was like, gosh, how would somebody in Germany know me? And I just, wow. So thank you all so much. You've been very, very kind. Sold copies in Australia, Japan, India, and
that's exciting.
It's cooking.
That's exciting.
Yeah. Well, so the first book, for those of you who have read the book, I am a widow. My husband died 4 years ago. It's hard to believe. But so the day that he was getting his initial scan for his diagnosis for terminal cancer, I was in Chicago defending my dissertation, and it was based on listening. I taught critical care nurses how to listen in a new way. Well, so when James got his diagnosis, I just put everything in a box and sealed it up and put it away. I was like, I can't think about that. But he kept encouraging me to pick it up again after he died. Well, the first book, Heart to Heart, was really kind of my grief work. It helped me get myself out of bed every day, and I had a good focus. And so then
it gave you a really good point to get up and do it.
Yes. And it was neat because I really felt like it was kind of a project with James too. Even, I mean, he's mentioned in the book, but he's just been such a big part of my life for so long. Well, so then last year, somebody from an assisted care facility called me. And they had read Heart to Heart, the initial book. And the director said, I know you normally work with nurses. Would you consider working with us? Our leadership team is stuck in grief, and we need to recalibrate after the year of lockdown. So as we
I was going to
talked,
say the year from hell. I'm sure it was.
yeah, really.
Between the hours they had to work
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
and the concern that they had for their own families at home,
Yes.
as
Yes.
well as going to work and seeing what they saw.
Yes.
I can't even comprehend it.
Well, and
Crazy.
Tina, nurses, I know, I mean, patient safety is an essential part of who they are. And so when they are in situations where they can't provide the care that's to their own standard, I mean, aside
Yeah.
from the hospital, it's so stressful. And then like a lot of times they'll end up being, filling in for somebody because that person's out, and they might not necessarily be trained for that specific task, and then that's really stressful because again, patient safety is
Right.
the bottom line. Yeah.
Right.
So
So you had
as
your husband pass away, and
yeah,
then you started your first book.
yeah. So then when this lady called and she and I were talking, and it struck me that I thought, well, grief is grief. And my grief was about people. I mean, within a 2-year span, I lost my mother, my brother, my husband, even my dog died. And so it was like, but I couldn't stay in that pit. And so I worked hard on these steps that became the second book. So when I was talking to the director, I said, but yeah, she said, I thought, recalibrate. Yeah, that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, exactly.
But we have to address it, because if we don't, it's going to grief will color your whole life. And, it's like you're at a crossroad. You can stay and stuck, or you can heal and move ahead, but you need to name it, name the grief to heal it, and you have to heal to move on.
When you name it, I think, do you name it like any name that you want? Or do you name it like, I think I have different griefs from different things. So do you name each one what it is, or do you just call it something like, oh, orange go away kind of thing? Or,
Well,
like,
rainbow leave.
yeah,
There's so much.
there's the door. Go ahead, help yourself.
Well, what we focused on was, I was working in a setting that is a work setting. So, confidentiality was a big issue. And if somebody felt comfortable enough to share, that was an issue.
Yeah.
But what we talked about was, I guess, to get to the bottom line from, I said, what's the story you've never told? And, I've got a few up my sleeve that I, wouldn't want to, I would hesitate to share. I mean, when I maybe have not been my most, upbeat or whatever, but
best moments.
Yeah. Yeah. And so for them, it was like, what part of this past year are you embarrassed about, or you feel shame about? And then what we did was, I encouraged them to write it out. And then what I said was, okay, take it out. So we were doing this by Zoom because things were just starting to open up again, although I was able to go and meet with them in person.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it surprised them. It was kind of fun. They all went, yay, when I watched it.
Get all excited.
I love the rock star. But so I suggested they burn it, because to me, the smoke lifting to the sky and cleansing and all. But what they did was they shredded their letters.
Oh.
And they said it was so satisfying to watch that machine eat it up, and, and that noise.
That's true.
And it was really cathartic for them. So
I've done the burning one, and it's very useful.
Yeah, yeah. So if you have a shredder handy, you might want to try that.
Get it out.
Yeah.
The other one, Claire, I'm sure you wouldn't do with your long-term care facility, but I always like the Greek, and they put a tarp down and they have like a wall, like you could use a garage front or
Uh-huh.
a cement wall of some sort or something. And you just go to the thrift store and you buy like 50 plates of their
Yeah.
crappy dishes, right? And you
Yeah. I'm
just
liking
throw
this.
the dishes against the wall.
Yes, I love it. Oh, wow. It's that physical action and then just that
That's
release
right.
because we carry so much tension in our body. We carry our stories in our bodies. And to
Yeah.
be able to release, I love that, Tina. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna have to put that in my bag of tricks.
Well, I have that for divorcees. So I think that would be a great one for that too.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I found was when you were at the long-term care facility, then you were able to do after the shredding. What was there? Do they have a second step that they have to do?
Yes, what we do. So the book. So basically, I had a six session. That's kind of hard to say. 6 sessions of where I met with them, and so the first two were about we reflected on the first one was just clearing out the junk, and that's when we did the letter and all. But also, I think just talking about it, and we were really fortunate because the leadership, the director and the director of nursing, were open to they
Talking.
were vulnerable to talking, and they would say things that were vulnerable, and it was like once they were vulnerable, then that gave everybody permission to speak. So they were a big contributing factor to the success of it, and just great people, really, really nice people. So reflect. Then on the next week we would talk about. I said, well, how did you come to be here? What's this type? Because in healthcare, well, and I say healthcare, but I think that teachers, law enforcement,
Counselors.
counselors, this is a particular kind of work you're called to. It's a profession. It's something that where you are concerned about the greater good or the common good, and not necessarily in it for the money, but having a bigger picture for all of humanity to be able to be better. So
And your soul.
yes, yes, yeah, and
Because it
that's
must be needing that somehow, right? When you're doing what you really passionately love.
yes. I think in healthcare you don't last long if you're not committed on some deep level. But I think too that it's important to remember the why. And that's what we reflect on, the why. And because I think that can help sustain people through some really tough times.
Yes.
And like right now, there's just it's still tough. And the thing, but you know what, Tina, healthcare was tough before the pandemic. It just shined lights on situations where there is nurses have a higher nurse to patient ratio, and the thing is that people are with people getting older, those increased number of patients are higher acuity, and then
Yeah.
now they're called to learn all of these machines, and then there's just it's complicated, it's thick. It's
Yeah.
all thick,
It's
but I
either
think
equipment or new
yes,
procedures or
yeah,
something changing
yeah.
all the time.
And so then put the pandemic, and oh, it just mm, mm.
It put a real magnifying glass on it, didn't it?
Yes, yes, yeah. So
So did they talk about what bothered them in the last year or 2 years in working in that area?
we had some really, really good discussions, and it was but again, the leadership set the tone of vulnerability, and they encourage people to speak up. And that Maslow's thing about the first thing, the hierarchy of needs, the bottom thing is you have to feel safe. And I can provide as safe a place as I can in my position, but the leadership really has to be committed, because if people feel like there's going to be any problem, if what they say is going to come back to bite them later on, then they're not going to speak up.
No.
But if they do, if as a whole, as a community, they're working on it together, it really, it was like, gosh, the difference between the first meeting and the second, they were just lighter. They were laughing and, talked about it. And I think too, that there were, it was good. The discussions were good because, I think middle managers are really squeezed, and decisions that they might not understand come to them, and they're supposed to reinforce them and or enforce them. And then, we had a chance to talk about that kind of those kind of situations and the why, and I think too the vulnerability of the staff. Oh, pardon me.
Yeah, that's for sure. Do you think that the long-term care facility is any different?
Robert, I'll call you back. Sorry.
Do you think it's any different than, say, a hospital or even a hospice when you're really having, I mean, it's really the same thing, isn't it? When you have patients that are.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. I think, well, with the long-term, there's not the turnover, but there's, but you get to, that was interesting to me because all my experience has been in hospitals. So I think that in a way, the long-term care is especially tender because these folks are their family. Their patients are their family, and they know the patients. They know the families. I mean, it's a big unit of warm and fuzzy feelings most of the time.
It is.
Yeah.
I know I wouldn't be able to do it. I would get way too attached to certain people.
Yeah.
And then to see them go, it would be horrible.
Yeah.
Even though they are, it doesn't matter. It doesn't help matters at all. When they do go, because they're in there and they are going to go at some point.
Yep. Yeah. And so by knowing that and understanding that, then you just do the best that you can and make them as comfortable as you can. And that was the thing with my husband, was that, I had been a hospice chaplain. I've been in critical care for a long time. I've been with a lot of people who have died. And I was determined that I was going to give my husband as good a death as I had anybody else. And that was my personal commitment. And I supported him. And we were on hospice. We had a great hospice team.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Did you see anything? When you ever visited at that moment when people are going, have you ever seen anything that would reflect?
Well, I think that
I know I
know
that
certain side.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of energy in the room.
Oh,
usually.
yes. Yeah. What I think is, well, it's neat because there's the energy there, and then when they leave, there's a definite shift. Well, I think I've talked to several people who have died and come back, and that's really interesting because, well, first of all, they kind of toss, kind of make a little joke, like to see if you're somebody they can talk to about it. Like the one guy told me he saw the color green. I said, "Oh, tell me more." and it was he was not on hospice. He'd been in the hospital for a long time because of a surgery thing, but he was telling me how he had been up at the ceiling and watched them work on him before. And there was one point where he was given an option to go ahead and die or stay. And he was a special ed teacher. And as soon as he thought about his students, he was right back in his body. And another man that I remember talking to, he had a massive heart attack outside his daughter's hospital room right after she'd had her baby. And, and
that's not a good time.
No. And he said, I can't leave her. I can't do that to her. And just right away, he was back in his body. And so I really, both times it's about love. Love brings people back.
Well, they say the universe is only filled with love. But you wonder in this war, what's going on there. That's a whole other topic in its own.
Yes.
Just send more love. Send more love.
You know, every morning I have one meditation that I watch every morning because and it includes sending light to the world, and I send it down over to that part of the world, and just
they need it badly.
They need it. And you know, and I think that we don't understand that. I mean, maybe what I'm doing every morning isn't flashy. I've really never told anybody that I do that I send light to them. But I feel like it's important. That's something I can do. Yes. And I think it's benefiting the world. But also I think, it's good for me to have that discipline and to say, make that commitment to bring light to the world.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't have any proof it's working, but I believe with all my heart it is.
I think so. I think love is the only thing that we can somehow control by putting it out there. And if there's enough love, then I think the world changes.
And that's the other thing, Tina. I agree with you completely. And each of us, we don't understand that. I think that there's a tipping point. Not every person in the whole world has to change, but if there's enough of us who do, that's going to help create that shift, and the others will come along, hopefully. Yeah. But and so that's, my little ritual every morning is my commitment to be a part of the light and not of the dark.
That's right. And I think it would be interesting to see, did you ever feel temperature changes when you were with people that were passing?
I don't remember. I don't remember that standing in. Now, one thing is, so I was down in Louisiana, and it's a different culture, very spiritual culture, and one of the, I don't know, not super, I guess maybe superstition. I don't know the exact word, but at some point the hospital sealed all the windows in the ICU. I mean, they just were doing it for whatever reason. But a lot of times the nurses would go over and open the window to let the soul out after somebody died. And one time, room 13, somebody had died, and for some reason things just didn't go well in that room after that person died. And the nurses approached me and they said, we think that soul's still there and we're worried about him. So I went in and sat in the space and prayed and said to the person, talked to them about dying and that they had died. And I said, it's time for you to go. And so I walked them over to the elevator, and I said, well, I'll ride down with you. But it was, I felt in my soul they were okay. They had made that, they understood the situation. Yeah, about going. And the thing that was neat too is that, I mean, some people might say that didn't make any sense. What was I doing? Blah, blah, blah. But I felt confident that I was doing some kind of good. If for nothing else, it really brought peace to the staff because they were concerned about that soul being stuck.
Well, and they're probably very right in what they
Yeah.
saw or felt, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I've heard that there's many souls that get stuck in a house or in a location or
Mm-hmm.
anywhere, really. I guess you can be stuck. And I understand too, when it's not their time to go, they kind of feel lost there
Yeah.
for a while.
Yeah.
Until they do leave. Like they had unmet things that they did in life that they hadn't accomplished yet. So they felt like it was like an accident and it wasn't their time.
Mm-hmm.
So they get stuck.
Well, and something it was interesting too was I used to sing to my patients as they died, and one of them was the songs I sang. Well, they were good old hymns. I'm a Methodist minister. I like those good old hymns. But also there was a child's song that I remember my kids when they were little. We used to listen to it. It was called "Angels Watching Over Me." And several times it was a good way to somebody who was actively dying but didn't quite know what was going on. But the words were, "If I should die before I wake." And several times people were like, oh, you could see it like, oh, that's what's happening.
Oh.
And so I could tell them I just put it out there. If it was out there, if they needed it, and if it was
to grab onto it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
I guess there's so many people that aren't ready or don't want to go. So if they're capable of being in that position, and I guess in long-term care, it happens a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and my husband, he fought it to the, he ran hard for a long time, and he survived for 4 years, and
Wow.
which was extremely.
Unheard of.
So many times they say, well, it's going to his bones. It's going to be any time now, and then he'd live another year or so, which was, I don't, please, I miss him, and I love him, but
yeah.
And then it was like, at some point when it was like he was ready or something, and it all went real fast. It all completely changed in less than a week.
Yeah. Well, I've understood too that some people get better, and then
yes, I've seen that.
All of a sudden, you think that they're going to be around again for a while, and then something happens like immediately after.
Well, and another thing is I've seen in the hospital is that sometimes they wait. I mean, I just cannot imagine during the lockdown, families not being able to be with their loved one while they died. I can't imagine saying goodbye on an iPad.
No.
But I also, in my experience, I've seen where it was like a mother or somebody didn't want the family there when they died. In the family, but they might have been there all day, and then I had this one case where the guy had been in the hospital for probably maybe 6 weeks. The whole time somebody was with him. Then I heard a code blue, and I went to go check and see him. And there had been 3 people, and one of them had gone out to smoke. Somebody had gone down to the cafeteria, and then the third person went to the bathroom. And then that was like the first time he'd been left alone in 6 weeks, and he died. And the family was upset. Oh, he died alone. But I think that people have ways that they want it to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I think they do too, because I've heard that lots of times. What do you think about being supportive for those that are up and down. You know, you're like your husband, and whether you're caregiving for them or whether they're in a hospice or in the hospital, but one day they're super good and you think they're going to be coming home, and the next day they're back at ground zero again.
I had been in the medical field. I'd been I worked with hospice. I did critical care, and I just, I thought I had it all under control. But when I had to sign that DNR thing, and it was my husband, that made it a whole different, different game. Yeah, and so I think that with all you can do, we call it the ministry of presence. I have this cat, and I'm surprised she hasn't shown up to show herself. But one day I got her after James died, and it was the anniversary of his death. And I'd been restless all day, walking around the house, and it was like, and finally I thought, I'm just going to stretch out on the couch. I'm just going to cry and just get it out.
Yeah.
Well, so this little kitty who came from the shelter, it took her a while to warm up to me. Yeah. But she came over and sat on my chest while I sobbed. And she just kind of rode it out, kind of like she was
on a motorboat.
Surfing. Yeah. And she was just, and then when I was done, she got up and left. And I told her, I said, in my business, we call that the ministry of presence. And I think that with the roller coaster, you have to decide you're not going to get on that roller coaster. I think that's a choice. And, but it's hard, even like I was saying with my experience, because, I thought I had medical knowledge, but in so many situations, it's like, I don't know if they're trying to be nice, but the people won't tell you you're really up the creek. And, so not wanting to take hope from the patient or whatever, but it's, I think you have to just, I'll just say for me, I decided I was not going to get, I would do it as little as I could, but of course there is some, but, one thing I feel guilty about, I'm okay with my husband. I did everything I could. We went to all the doctors, we did all the treatments, we did everything, and I'm satisfied. But having been in the caretaker role, I feel bad because all my years of ministry, I didn't realize how much the caretaker needed, how much more than whatever I was given. I wasn't given enough. But, I hadn't walked in those shoes, and I didn't realize how tough it is.
Yeah, because of this up and down, I think.
Yeah.
And to watch somebody you love for years.
Yeah, and somebody you love, you're helpless, and they're dissolving before your eyes.
Yeah, and changing.
Yes. Yeah.
And then when they finally do go, I mean, how can you not be happy for them?
Yeah.
In one aspect.
Yeah.
But we're so selfish, we're selfish people. Or humans on this earth, and we want them to be here with us.
Yeah.
So then there's that pain. So does the grief start when you get this bad knowledge of you being sick? Like, does that when the grief starts and it just keeps accumulating like a path?
Well, there's something called anticipatory grief. And that is when and I mean, or maybe you think, you don't know what you don't know, as how the saying goes. But I think you have a sense of watching your life
change.
Yeah. And I think too, that's part of that process of acceptance. So it was kind of a trick because James we never talked about him dying. It was like that was the subject that we couldn't. He would talk to the hospice nurse. He talked to my son. But for some reason that was it. one point I said, James, I said, you're really sick, right? And he said, who told you that? I said, well, we've just been to the oncologist and you're doing radiation every day. And
There's a fly on the wall and it just told me. It's watching you.
Yes. Yeah. So, and I'm sorry that we couldn't talk about it, but also
I'm so surprised because of what you do.
And that might be why we didn't talk about it. What I was really,
although Claire, I can't say that because I have never heard any, and I've gone through hundreds of guests. Not one of them said that they were, that they talked about it beforehand. Nobody.
Yeah.
It's a taboo subject.
Well, and
it's taboo.
Well, and two, I think that, well, like with James, he declined so fast that I guess that's one thing about that day to day. We don't see the trajectory going down.
No, because we're in it.
Yeah. And then it's such a surprise. I was like, really? You're going to actually go? But then I was, thank goodness. I mean, thank God he was really suffering. And thank God he wasn't here for COVID, because also James developed dementia from from heart failure, from all the treatment. And he is always sweet. I mean, just a good, cool dude. But he started getting paranoid. And one of my sons said, Mom, it's probably good you all weren't together in the house for a whole year, just the two of you. And I was like, I thought, somebody was going to die.
Well, there were a lot of divorces after COVID.
But I've just so many times I thought I would just say, for better or worse, sickness and in health. I mean, that's just coming. I thought I promised I would, And luckily I was in a good marriage and we were really close. And I mean, I was really fortunate. I know a lot of people aren't, but
Is there a different grief when you're all sitting as a family around the passing away person?
One thing was I really appreciated that time and I found that to be really healing, because I thought at first, all I could remember was how awful it was at the end. And I thought, we've been together 40 years. This is the way I'm going to remember him. Because really, in a way, he'd been gone for a while. His body was here. But my husband, he died in March. At Christmas, he came back. He came back for just a minute. And I said, James, I really miss you. And he said, I know it's hard. And then he went back into wherever he was going in his mind. But I really...
Don't you think they know?
Yeah, I think, I wouldn't be surprised. But what I'm so grateful for is that having that time to talk to friends and family. Here comes the cat, sorry. Having my minister of presence here.
Yeah.
But to have that time to remember him as he really was.
Right.
And not just there.
Of who he was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there a different grief for dementia when you're with people that are going through this? I mean, it's never usually very quick. I haven't really met anybody that has gone through that quickly.
Yeah.
So it's a long, drawn out disease.
And it's again that anticipatory grief. That's just, it's just like, I guess it's like grieving every day. Well, and that was the thing, man, we had the best sitter. Well, James didn't want a sitter, but so we called her his administrative assistant. And when she came, she was great. And she was a good
That's
woman
cute.
of faith and spirit. And she, because of her, I could be the grieving widow. I didn't have to be the chaplain. She kind of filled that role for me. But when she first came, I said, I look at James and I see loss. And you look at him and accept him as he is. And later on, after he died, she said, "Remember when you said that to me?" And I said, "Oh yeah." She said, "Yeah." She said, I've never known unconditional love before. And my husband and she had such a strong connection and spiritual connection.
Yes.
And so maybe that was why he was hanging around. He needed to I think about this whole time he was around, and I thought, wow, thank goodness, because he got to know both of our daughters-in-law, and he got to meet 3 of the 4 grandchildren, and how much richer our lives were because he was able to participate in that.
Yes. What healing can you do other than writing it out, categorizing it? I guess you have to name it as something.
Yeah.
Because you might not even know, right? You might not
Yeah.
know it's triggering that.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes it's a song you hear or a commercial or something
Yeah.
somebody says, and then it's just like a energy lightning bolt through you. It just
Well, and the thing is, it's not like, you might be thinking, oh, that was a nice memory. No, it's like every time you're experiencing it again.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll knock you to your knees. But I think that what's really important to it is to allow yourself to feel it, allow yourself to cry. I mean, even now, not too long ago, something happened, and I just put my head down on the desk and boo-hooed. And the day that, but I feel he's around a lot. The day we uploaded the first book to Amazon, I was so stressed out. And I was just like, I wanted to throw up. I did, because I thought, here I am. Okay, World Wide Web. Here's my jugular vein.
Yeah. Take
and
it.
I said out loud, James, I wish you were here. And the song, Here Comes the Sun, Little Darling, which he was a Southern gentleman. And I just felt like he was here with me.
Oh,
But
for sure.
yeah, he pops up every once in a while. It's
It
great.
gave you some strength.
Yes.
So for staff that have secondary grief, or for individuals who have a friend that's passed away, is that considered secondary?
Let's think about primary grief. Let's say you go to a pond and you toss a stone into the pond and it slaps that water and disappears. That initial shock, about the loss of somebody, somebody you love, or your job or your lifestyle, that's the primary pain, loss. Those ripples that come out, that's the secondary grief. That's what everything else is. That's trying to, well, when I was in critical care, so many times the family, like say if a motorcycle wreck, suddenly they've lost half their income for their family. But how are we going to pay for this funeral that they weren't,
Or not funeral? How are we going to look after them now?
Yeah.
Now we have to look after them and they're down in income.
Yes. And so secondary grief is the rest of the stuff. There are the stages of grief, denial, all that stuff. And anger was one of them. and I felt all those emotions, every one of them.
I
But
don't think there's steps. I think it's just here and
yeah,
there, and
I think
they
so
fly
too.
and go and leave
Yeah,
and come.
they do, and I believe that with all my heart. And so, and it's a beginning. And there's so much more. There's this whole other stuff going on. But oh, so I was talking to somebody about something insurance or something, and I was on the phone, and oh, first thing they asked for my husband's social, and I couldn't say it. I couldn't speak. I was just like, and this long, long pause, and I started crying. And this nice person said, "It's all right, it's all right." And so finally, I was going, "Buh, buh, 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 buh," you know. And then another piece of paper I got that I had to. There is wisdom in not doing anything serious for a year because you're in a fog. I was in a fog for maybe 3 years. I would say. I mean, literally. But so I'm filling out this paper, and it says I'm supposed to designate my my station in life. So married, divorced, single, and but not widowed. And I started yelling at the paper. I was like, I'm single, but it's not by choice. I was with this, I've been part of a team for 40 years.
Get mad at it.
Yeah.
What do you think for staff that, it's hard because you might have a friend in that work environment. You might have
Yeah.
one of those patients that have become a friend, and you've become a friend with the family members, and now they pass away. So how do they cleanse themselves? Because they don't have the funeral to worry about. They don't have all that stuff you have to do when you get home.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they have the residue.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that it's really important. And I don't know enough. I know some about that type of setting. I don't have the experience like I do in the hospitals. But I think that in the hospitals, we had a quarterly memorial service that where staff was invited as well as the families. And I think that uh, that formal acknowledgement of grief is really, really important.
So for
If you
those
can,
that haven't had that for COVID time, they should still.
yes, they should. They should. Well, and that's when I met with uh, the folks I did. It was a year later. I mean, and that's the thing. That's why it's important to address it, Tina, because it's grief is sticky, and it's going to hang around, and until you name it. You need to name it so you can heal it. You need to heal it so you can move on. And move on sounds like kind of harsh.
Forgetting everything, but you're not.
Yeah, but I think it's finally moving on to me means accepting. And one day I was at one of my sons, and they both live out of town. And I was talking, la 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 la, and I saw he and his wife kind of passing glances back and forth, and I thought, and I said, "Oh, I see y'all doing that." And I said, "I guess I am different." I said, "I finally figured out it's okay to be happy."
Oh, so they weren't. They were
So,
thinking it was strange that you were happy.
well, I think that I was just responding in a different way. That maybe they weren't saying, "What's wrong with her? She's happy," but it's like, "What's different about her?" And then I was, and I was in a lighter place on that trip, and I did. So it's complicated. It's complicated. I think too with one thing was I found. Well, one thing those what I call the blindside hits, where all of a sudden you just get slammed, and that I was still working with organ donor families after James's death. So, and that was kind of hard because here my husband's dying. I'm working with donor
Yeah.
families, and But one day I was on the way to the hospital. I got a call and I just got one of those boo-hoo, out of the blue. And I pulled over and I said, so I'm from the South, I've been in the South a long time. I said, y'all, talking to those spares. I said, look, I can't take these blindside hits anymore. And I said, I've got a job to do. And they come every once in a while, but not nearly as much as they did. And I think that's, been part of my healing journey.
Yeah. Nobody likes those blindsided, and those long drawn out ones are both, I don't know. There's nothing good about it at all, about the whole thing. The whole darn thing. There's just nothing good about it from beginning to end.
Yeah.
Because if you say, well, what would you prefer if you had a menu? Would you like to die immediately? Would you like to die after an hour? Would you like to die in a few days? Would you like to die in a few months? Would you like to die in a few years? What would you pick?
Yeah.
None of the above.
Well, it seems like the sudden deaths so many times are easier on the patient or the person, but then that's so hard on the family. And then those long lingering deaths are
hard on both.
Yeah. But I remember right before James died, there was one night and he was just so restless, and I went in there and he said, "How did you know I was suffering?" And I said, "Well,
I know
pals. You. Yeah, I know you.
Exactly.
But so it's important to get this out, and because it'll color all your life, and until you can find a certain peace with it, then you don't know what's going to trigger the next thing. And that's a hard way to live.
And I've talked about so much about when trauma hits, whether it's immediate passing of the person or it's long drawn out, it doesn't matter. It's still the hit of whatever that looks like. And I think your brain, just like your logical brain, just disappears. I talk about it, how it just like floats in the air, and you're trying to grab it to be able to like get rid of the fog and put your brain back in your head.
Yes. Yeah.
Because people don't realize how difficult it is to deal with situations and just life itself and answer questions that you could answer if you were half asleep on a normal day easily. But now after the trauma, it's just like there's this fence or a wall up, and there's no accessing that information that's over on the other side.
Yeah.
Because your brain has no logic left in it. It's just like it disappeared.
Well, I was talking about my fog. I'm thinking it might have been over a year ago, or maybe even longer than that. Then one day I thought about Sleeping Beauty.
Yeah.
And I thought, what was it like for her to wake up? Can you imagine kind of stretching, rubbing her eyes and look around and say, what the heck happened to that last 100 years? And that's kind of the way I felt, like, what happened to that last decade or so?
Yeah.
And then I just slowly started coming back, slowly.
Yeah. And it's hard because you've put now where you go home, and his clothes might be still in the closet, and his items that he liked to eat and drink are still in the kitchen. And there's so many things, and the empty bed is really hard.
Yeah.
You don't have your friend beside you.
Yeah.
And I know people deal with that with pets too, when it's an empty house and their pet is gone.
Just this weekend, I had one tub that it's on the outside. It said, I can't deal with it yet.
Oh, that's good.
And I went through it. But it's been 4 years, and it was neat because there were a few things of his that our sons wanted, and I put them in a box and mailed it to him. But it's, in each time those kind of things come up, it gives you a chance to remember and smile and say, man, we had a good run.
Yeah.
We did. Yeah.
Yeah. But like you said, you just pushed it. So that's a really good tip to be able to do that and put them in a
There's no
box, I
rush.
guess.
Yeah, there's no rush. I did. Let's see. So we were on hospice. We see that's the caretaker in me. We were on hospice, but so we had the hospital bed. But after it was gone, I slept on the couch probably a couple of months. I just didn't want to go in the room, and then I put a different bed in, one that he'd never slept in. And after maybe 18 months, a couple of years, maybe I stopped wearing my wedding ring. And I think too, I finally reached the point, and like I said, I was fortunate because I had a really good marriage. But at some point, I realized that he wouldn't want me to be
Miserable.
stuck. Yeah.
I had a guest on one where they were in the hospital bed and she had to go in for surgery, and they had never talked about death and dying and what the person wanted and what they didn't.
Yeah.
So they're quickly talking about this in the hospital room. And she says, and I don't want you going with any other girl that I don't agree with. So I just thought that was so cute because she was putting her stamp of approval on something, whether or not, that was sweet.
Well, and James came to me in a dream one night, and we were talking about this book, and he said, we need you to be doing this work. And you'll have everything you need, and I'm here. And I said, James, I said it was hard and all that. And then I said, James, this is lonely.
Yeah.
I was the baby in the family. I was always riding on somebody's hip, and it was then he goes, Claire, we got a little something worked out for you down the road. So I don't know, but I don't know if it made me a dream,
fake.
but it made me feel better because I thought I didn't need his permission, but it was nice to have his blessing.
Right. It makes you feel like you can move on.
Yes.
And I don't want to say move on like from it, but you're moving on to a different direction.
Well, you're moving toward life. And I think that it gets back to that choice. And, look, I could have sat on the couch, curled up in the fetal position, and waited for James to come get me.
Yeah.
And that was really tempting.
Yeah.
But my mom lived to be 98, so I'd be hanging out for a long time.
A long time in a bed.
Yeah. But and I made the choice, and also at the very early on in James's illness, I was worked at the hospital, and the director of geriatric psych department took me. He said, "How are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm fine. Hi, everything's fine." And he said, "No, Claire," he said, "the caretakers die before the patient." And I thought to myself, I'm not going down with the ship. I'm going to do everything I can for him, but I'm not going down with the ship.
Yeah.
And I was very intentional the whole time. Everything we could possibly do, we did. And I'm satisfied. And maybe that's one reason I can talk about grief now. And like I said, like you're saying, moving on, it's moving toward life, I think.
Yes. Yes. Well, an extension. It's just an extension.
Yeah.
So if you're working in a hospital setting and they come across death from patients on an ongoing daily basis, what can you do as a caregiver of that sort, whether you're a nurse or caregiver, or what can you do because I think a lot of nurses and staff, they get cold. They get very cold against getting close to that next person,
yeah,
because
yeah.
you can't keep getting hurt constantly,
Mhm,
can you?
mhm. Well, no, I think that self-preservation's, that's it's real. But I also, again, getting back to that caretaker's heart that so many healthcare workers have, I think that in a way that's part of it. I think maybe the detachment kind of,
Of the outcome, maybe?
maybe, I mean, I don't know. I've seen a lot of broken-hearted nurses, I have to admit, but if they feel like they've done everything that they can. And I think that's the other thing that's really hard about this post-COVID thing is that, there's a professional standard of care, there's stuff, your license, but then there's a personal standard of care that for the caretaker, and if they feel like can't provide it, that is stressful.
Yeah, especially even if it wasn't to the patient, but to the patient's family
Mm-hmm,
members as well,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
because you almost
Yeah.
have to have different care to both. You have to have
Yes.
empathy for both.
Yeah. Yeah. And then
I would be terrible at it. Just to tell you now. If they want someone to stand there and cry with, I'm right in there.
yeah,
I'd be perfect.
count on you. Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's that ministry of presence, and it's something that was really cool. So when one day James was having bone biopsy or something, and it was there at the hospital where I worked, and I'm a chaplain. Why I didn't ask any of the other chaplains to come sit with me, I don't know. I guess I was,
Think it was nothing. You can do
yeah.
it.
And he stayed in there for so long. But the house cleaner, the environmental services lady, who was really grouchy, walked by, and she was one of those kind of people where people sort of tiptoe around. And she walked by once, and then she saw me in the waiting room, and then she came back and she's, what's going on? And I told her, and she sat with me. And she said, I've seen you sit with so many people. You don't need to be here by yourself. And she would have been one of the last people I would have even thought to ask for, and what a generous heart. And then she said, I'm going to church tonight. What's your husband's name? We're going to put him on our prayer list. And she always asked about him. And, but again, that power of just being with somebody, that power of presence.
Yeah. So that's a great tip for people to help those that are helping the other.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
To help
Yes.
the patient.
Yes.
Because
yes.
you're like secondary to helping the person that's helping. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Filters down, I guess. And I mean, those nurses and medical staff, they all have to go home after and try and live a normal life.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one thing that, I have a service that I offer. I call it being a listening partner. And I'm available to talk to, usually it's healthcare workers, but I can hear all the stuff that they can't take home to their family. So if they just need to unload, I've been in the operating room, all that's, so I have a different perspective than maybe some others might, but just to be able to unload is really.
So maybe that's the tip for all those staff members is to find that extra support person in some shape or form, whether it's another staff or whether it's someone from outside or someone that they can unload to.
Yes. And the power of the story. Don't be afraid to tell your story to more than one person. Because they're the Psalms of lament, in the Bible. But it's like every time we tell our story to another person, we're shaping, it's part of our process of healing, because we're shaping the story to be livable. And so it's really important to not be shy and say, well, I'm just not going to tell anybody. You need to get it out and talk.
Yeah.
And the greatest service we can do is to listen.
That's true. Supportive, non-judgmental, and listen.
Yeah.
Just be there.
And not
present.
try to fix it for them. Just listen.
Just listen and be there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the other good thing that a staff member could do, I guess, is, of course, write it out and shred it like you suggested, or burn it. Like if there's a specific story or part that really
Yes.
hurts, really
Yes.
triggers something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's not just a one-time thing. I mean, you can do it more than once. Maybe, something comes up and you want to release it that way and you let it go. Well, might be later that might trigger something else. Something else might come up. It's the process. And I think in our Western civilization, we want, especially in the United States, we want everything fast. We want it black or white. No, this is gray. This is the gray area.
Yeah.
And it takes time and gentleness. And you can't rush it.
And love. Yeah. Do you have any, I hate to go because I could talk about this forever. Do you have any final messages for the listeners that they could take home?
I think that we are living in a time of great transition, and that part of our grief, our communal grief, is we look back on pre-COVID and say, oh, wow, if only things were like they were. Well, the thing is, not everything was perfect before.
Yeah.
Like I said, healthcare had under big strains even before COVID. But I think too that it's important to have faith and know that it's going to be okay. It might take a while, but like we talk about those ripples being the secondary grief, those ripples, even they reach the shore.
Yeah. But they kick you in the ass a little bit before they get there.
Yeah, they got to work you over a little bit. But I think we can't give up hope. And I think that in this world today, again, comes back to choice. Your glass half empty or half full. But the way we can contribute to the world is to shower it with light and see. There's an old saying, look for the good in another person and tell them what you see. I mean, you're going to buy into all the darkness? Are you going to feed the darkness? Or are you going to feed the light? And we all have an important role in this. Even if we don't realize it, we're more important than we know.
Yes, because you don't know who you're going to touch today or tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Awesome. Well, that's beautiful. Thank you, Claire. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Tina. It's always fun to talk to you.
Yeah, and hopefully Dr. Claire is going to be back for our anniversary Hollywood Squares event that we have, which we had so much fun.
This will be my second year. This will be my
second. Yes. I promise not to have corny 70s this time. We'll find better 2022 questions.
Well, don't get them too new. That's why I've been a hermit now for about 2 years, and I see stuff that comes on, and I'll say, "Who is that person?"
Yeah, or what is that?
Or this starlet, and who is dating who? And I'm like, who are these people?
What does that mean?
I don't know if I'd be good on this Hollywood Squares after all, Tina.
It'll be fun.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Claire, for coming on.
Sure.
We could talk about grief again. I'm sure we could do another one about healing as well, because we just can't get it out there enough.
Yeah.
There's so many instances of that are similar but different.
Well, and I think that it's important we don't do grief well as a society. And I think it's important to talk about it and to bring it out into the open and shine the light on it.
I think a fun celebration would be to do that dish throwing, but to do it
Yes.
in a big group, like with all your family of friends, and and when they go up to throw a dish, they have to tell a story of some sort and then throw the dish.
I love it. I love it,
I
Tina.
think that
That's a
would
great
make it
idea.
more, as a group, closer, like something you're doing for each other, sharing and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
like
how
it.
that will be Tina's new celebration of life. I think I should trademark that.
Yes. Yes. I like it. I like
It
it.
sounds like fun, I think. I mean, can you be sad doing it? For sure. I mean, it's always sad.
Yeah.
But you're left together in the end. So why not do something that you can do something together that is meaningful? Sometimes people go out on a boat and put the, remains overboard, or whatever that means to that group, I guess. And that's why we have those worksheets for talking about these things.
Yes.
Because in the group, you could have wine and cheese and appies and have the worksheets and go down the sheet and ask, Susie, what do you want in that spot? Oh, Fred, what do you want? And laugh about it, and joke about it, and have ideas about it.
Well, the other thing is too, I'm glad you mentioned that again, because I cannot emphasize how important it is to have, it's called a living will in some states, advanced directive, having these discussions. And we don't want to think about ourselves dying, but at the very end, the one we had in Louisiana was very specific about different treatments. The one we had here in my area now was pretty generalized, but I was so glad I had a chance. I had the specific instructions that I knew James wanted, and it made it easier for me to provide that for him because I knew what he wanted.
Right. Yeah. In all facets, which aren't always just in that living will, but talking about, maybe what you wanted to wear, or what songs that you wanted to have played, or what you wanted done with your blog that you write every week, and what do you want to have happen with that, or your website. What do you want done with that after? All of that kind of stuff isn't in the actual, legal documents. They're otherwise, they're in those worksheets that we talk about, and brings out that kind of thing.
The other thing, I really support what you're doing with your app, because I was a chaplain after Hurricane Katrina, and there were so many people who thought they were just leaving New Orleans, for a few days, and lost everything. And I was talking to one lady, and she said, "Oh yeah," and then something in her closet, and she said, "I don't have a closet anymore." And she said, My closet was filled with clothes with the tags still on them. And, you just never know.
No, you don't know. And you don't know where you've put your documents, and you don't know if they're in that closet or that drawer, or anything, just anything. So, well, thank you. Thank you again. Please take a moment and subscribe to our channel if you haven't, because I'm going to get my hand out again and push on that bell. If you haven't, click on that little bell and subscribe button down there. And if you are thinking about that someone special right now while you're watching this show, make sure you reach out to them today. Call them, FaceTime them, Zoom them, text them, go to their house and see them, or wherever they are, because you don't know what tomorrow might bring. And stay tuned for our podcast and our live streams. Interesting and accomplished people just like Clare here that are in the world today. I think you'll be entertained, informed, and hope that we've inspired you and motivated you to start thinking about your unique plan. Maybe it's brought up a couple things in your own life and your own family that we're not Superman. So expect the unexpected and start thinking about some of these things that you or your family members might be not talking about right now, and maybe you should be. So we were on all podcast platforms: YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. We have a wonderful Facebook VIP group where people can share, ask questions, and talk to other people in the similar situations. It's a great, great community, and would love to have you all there. Thank you for taking your time and sharing your time with us. And I always sing Carol Burnett at the end, and Claire knows that. I'm so glad we had this time together just to have a laugh or sing a song. Seems we just get started, and before you know it, I can't do that part, comes the time we have to say so long. So long, everybody. Thank you, Claire, for coming on again.
Thank you for having me, Tina. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, you're very welcome. Be kind and stay safe, everybody. Expect the unexpected. Thank you. Till next.